When the Prophet ﷺ says, pray as if it's your last prayer, it's that you actually shut off the idea that there's anything beyond this prayer, that there's any future prayer, that this is the last prayer that I'm going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with. Imagine this is the last time you get to talk to Allah in this dunya, that you have that interview with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it could indeed be the case that it's the last time that you go into that salah. And so it connects to a greater idea of dunya. And here's what I want you to think about. You can't pray as if it's your last prayer without treating every day as if it's your last day. And so in general, the way that you view life is the way that you view prayer. The way that you view death is going to inform the devotion or lack of devotion that you find in your salah. So pray as if it's your last prayer means live as if it is your last day. So how you prioritize prayer is how you prioritize the akhirah over dunya in the general sense, and how you prioritize Allah over the people in the general sense. And it's important to also understand that you're not going to be able to dismiss everything except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you enter into the salah if you're not already prioritizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over everything else when you're not in salah. So it speaks to your overall priorities. And this is why the scholars mention that as you enter into the prayer, you are either amongst the muhibbeen, you're amongst the lovers coming back to that domain of love, or you're amongst the muqassirin, you're amongst the deficient who are coming back to apologize, the mudhnibeen, the sinners, to apologize and to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with all of the ways that you've forgotten Him between those two prayers. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to experience the external desires out of His mercy. But in His mercy, He invites you to His banquet of salah 5 times a day. And he uses what Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu described the Quran as the banquet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That you are invited to a banquet of the Lord at least 5 times a day. And when you come in, every salah has its different ingredients. It has a different amount of rak'at. It has the prayer being recited out loud or silently. It has different components. And all of that is meant to inform you in a certain way. He says, and if you look at the different ingredients of the prayer, the recitation of the Quran is the best recitation. So the best to hear and the best to recite is the Quran. Dua is the best way to ask for something. And you have that. You have qiyam and ruku' and sujood, and these are the best motions of the body. And you're bringing light in the process to every single part of your existence, even physically. You're bringing nur to yourself. Nur in the heart, light on the tongue, light to the ears, and light to every single one of your limbs. He says that the angels, the earth, the mountains, the rivers, they all rejoice at your prayers. And you're inspired towards righteousness in a way that your loved ones rejoice at your prayer as well. Because they see that the salah is generating, a meaningful prayer is generating a meaningful change in your character. And just like fasting has farhatan, has 2 joys. When you break your fast here and you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with it, you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your salah in complete joy, because the standing before Allah on the Day of Judgment is going to be determined by the standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dunya. And so you think about Allah calling you to a banquet, inviting you to a banquet, how you come to that banquet, how clean are you, how respectful are you, how attentive are you to that banquet, where are you sitting at that banquet, how much are you paying attention? All of that is important. And Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu said that if our hearts were right, that they would never get enough of the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he gives this example, rahimahullah ta'ala, Ibn al-Qayyim. He says, imagine a starving person who comes to a feast, and all they do is they take 1 handful of food and they just put it in their mouths and they leave. So this is the example of a person that is completely in ghafla, completely in heedlessness. And Allah Azza wa Jal calls them to an act to where they could completely immerse themselves in something beautiful, transformative, but they only take a handful and they abandon that table. And so the drought of the heart is called ghafla. It's heedlessness, and that's being distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And salah is the purification of ghafla, the ultimate purification of heedlessness. Aqim as-salata li dhikri, establish the prayer for my remembrance. And when the heart is watered with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the branches become moist and they produce all sorts of fruits and vegetables and beneficial things.